time and time again, you see people that common sense and common compassion would dictate should get legal aid, but they're turned down and they have to fall on their own resources or their family's resources or crowdfunding or whatever, and they just can't get legal aid. And they've done nothing wrong. They're victims of one situation or another. And then you've got someone like Shamima Begum, who most people would describe as a traitor. And yet she's getting legal aid to come back to a country that, by and large, doesn't want her. You can see the discrepancy there, can't you, between those two positions?
Well, I don't think the final decision has been made around legal aid.
Well, let's talk about the principle. I mean, it looks as if she's going to get it, so let's proceed from there.
Yeah. The wider principle is that what makes us different from ISIS and Daesh, which are murderous organisations that throw gay people off buildings, that butcher people, murder women, rape women. What makes us different from a regime like that is that we believe in justice, we believe in fairness in this country. Nobody in their right mind would leave this country to go to Syria and join ISIS.
She did.
But she did.
Yeah, she did indeed. And I think that's where we need to, I've raised this point before, I've raised this numerous times now, is we need to look at what happened when a group of 8, 14 and 15-year-old girls were being targeted by ISIS. The Metropolitan Counter-Terrorism Command were aware of it, the social workers at Tower Hamlets Council were aware of it, and the Bethnal Green Academy School were aware of it.
Well, I see people...
But if I can just finish this...
Oh, of course, yes, please.
But they did not inform their parents.
No.
But the thing is, a failure of a system at one point in this huge, sort of like horrifying story, does that necessarily mean that taxpayers should fund the case of Shamima Begum at this point in the story when we hear allegations that she was far from just somebody who was innocent around the campfire doing the cooking? We hear allegations she was involved in, the application of vests and suicide vests to people. When those sort of details emerge, they may be true, they may not be true, we don't know yet, people think, well, hang on a minute, I work hard, I pay money, of course I'd like to see people get money when they need it to fight for justice, but not someone like that.
Well, there's a lot of allegations being made. I mean, like you, I read the reports in the newspapers. These are there's no names, there's no details of who's allegedly said this. So these, you could say absolutely anything about Shamima Begum, absolutely anything, and that's what people are doing.
Because you can't libel her, can you?
Well,
you can't. I mean, as you say, because you can say anything. She has no reputation to defend, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but you seem to me, can I just say, this is what I wanted to come and say before, and I'm sorry to interrupt you before you finish your point, but it seems to me that what you're really saying is that we should be heaping coals of fire on these people. You say that we're better than them, and of course we are, and that we have a civilised state as opposed to a chaotic, brutalised one. Of course we do. But why does that mean that we have to somehow prove that by giving them money to fight a cause which most people simply don't support?
Well, the principles of our legal justice system, the principles of our democracy, is that we treat people fairly.
So does that mean that everybody, in your view, should get legal aid? Because we know there's a limited pot.
Well, I worked as a police officer for 30 years, and some of the individuals who are arrested were leading incredibly chaotic lives. If it wasn't for lawyers and barristers, their views and their lives wouldn't be articulated. So I think you're absolutely right. I think everybody should have the right to justice.
All right, Jerry, you've heard his case. He's laid it out calmly and very clearly. What do you say?
And I can be with him to a certain extent. However, it is morally repellent. She is entitled to legal aid by law, and there's nothing the government can do because it's a very, very serious matter. But going back to what you said earlier, people should be treated fairly. They are not treated fairly. Look at the bereaved at the inquest of the Westminster terror attack. They're not getting legal aid at all. The government has refused it. The government has slashed legal aid for everybody. If you want to go and get your child out of care in the county court, you're not going to be represented.
What do you say to his point that a way of demonstrating to ISIS and to the world in general that we are morally superior to them is to do this, is to actually go the extra mile?
They don't give a damn. They don't give a damn.
You think they just laugh at us?
They just laugh at us. You foolish people. We despise you. We want to destroy you. We hate every Western value. We want a caliphate and we'll behead you.
Does it reflect, though, to the rest of the world, a vision of what our society stands for that might play well?
Oh, I think it probably does. I imagine Trump would think we're rather stupid. A lot of other countries would think we're rather stupid. But you've got to look at the whole context of this. The whole context is people are not being treated fairly. She is jumping the queue.
It is
That's
hard
wrong.
to think of any other country that would be having this debate, actually, isn't it?
Absolutely
Very
right.
hard to
Yeah.
think of any European
Yeah.
country. I can't see France contemplating for
Hungary?
the moment.
Poland?
Or America, or any of the great democracies, whatever their faults are. I can't see any other country getting itself into this fix, can you?
Well, I disagree with you. I think most countries who want to demonstrate that they treat their citizens fairly, no matter what their citizens do, if you take take the argument to its logical conclusion, do we then decide people who've committed murder, rape,
No, of course not.
bank robbery, do we then say to them as individuals,
No.
I'm sorry, what you've done is awful, we are not going to
But
provide
those are
public defence
but those are
fees."
specific, if you like, selective crimes. What we're talking about here is somebody who's turned their face against everything that we stand for, everything, in terms of the sanctity of life, in terms of the decent treatment of other human beings. I mean, what ISIS was doing until very recently in Syria was disgusting. I mean, it made the Nazis, by comparison, look not quite as bad as ISIS, and that's saying something. I mean, they really were at the extreme edge, and she was out there as part of it. And you're right to say that these are allegations, but even if only half of them or a quarter of them are true, it condemns her utterly as to somebody who has set their face to our norms. And that's what's different here to somebody who's committed a murder or who's killed somebody because they drank too much behind the wheel. This is somebody who's turned their face against everything we stand for.
Yeah. Well, I think the wider principles are, and I think we need to just take the emotion out of this, look at this objectively, and I know that's difficult for some people to do. I think we just need to say, what are our principles? What are our principles of this country, which we all value? And to be honest, I think we are in a much higher plane, morally, ethically, than ISIS and Daesh. And Daesh is ended. It's ended. It's got a slither of land.
But they're still there.
Well, we know that
they're
it's
still
quite bad.
fighting.
Is part of the principle the fact that, of course, as I understand it, this legal aid claim has been filed on behalf of her family, who haven't gone out there, who haven't done those things. And they, very understandably, like any family, want their daughter back, whatever they've done.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you think about... well, there's two issues there. One, if you think about what we've all done, and I say we, all of us, silly, foolish things we've done at 14 and 15. And these girls have done the spectacularly
this is
foolish
not
things.
silly
I think getting your ears
This is not
pierced,
silly and foolish.
or doing something daft. It is different. That's the frightening thing, because she doesn't seem to be expressing the remorse about her decision.
Yeah.
She might express remorse about how it's ended up. She doesn't seem to express that, does she?
Yeah. Well, if you listen to the interviews, I mean, she was... there is the ethics of journalists going in there sort of hours before her baby's born, knocking on the door of the delivery room to interview her immediately after the baby's born. This is somebody who is traumatised. I as a police officer, I never got used to seeing dead bodies when I was dragging them out of a car or going into a murder scene. It was horrific. She talks about seeing severed heads and not being...
And she wasn't traumatised at all, because she said so. She thought it was just one of those things.
She was OK with it to see severed heads in things. All right, well, I do agree with that, though. I do think that in terms of the way that she has handled herself in the media, she's a babe in the wood. She doesn't know what she's doing, and she's made a lot of basic errors in that regard. But that doesn't take away from the fundamental points that we've...
And I don't think, for that point, I don't think she'll ever recover in the eyes of the...
No, I agree with that.
No.
I agree
And
with
what about other people? How many more are going to come over?
All right, thank you both very much indeed.